The greatest influence for me in my work was the city of Philadelphia, which I consider to be one of the sickest, most corrupt, decadent, fear-ridden cities that exists.
I was thinking of you when I was sitting through Blue Velvet, because I was able to recall how you've talked about your idyllic childhood, tree-lined streets, parents who never argued, didn't smoke, didn't drink, although you wish they did all of those things. You were the same boy at the time who could go to Brooklyn to visit a relative, be terrified, filled with fear, find yourself in Philadelphia, sharing a room with your buddy Jack Fisk, living near a morgue, be filled with fear. And it's all there in Blue Velvet. The idyllic tree-lined streets, firemen waving hello, and all of these things going on underneath. Am I putting autobiographical things in where they don't belong, or
No,
are they there?
They're there. I started out in the Northwest in one of the most happy childhoods you can imagine. It was picket fences and blue skies. And so things became a contrast to me, other things. Philadelphia in particular.
Why Philadelphia in particular?
Philadelphia, when I lived there, I can't say now for sure, but it was one of the sickest, most fearful, corrupt, frightening cities I've ever, set foot in, and especially the neighborhoods I was living in. And I guess I, feel the atmosphere of a place, the mood of a place, and it affects me. And I just felt I was living inside an ocean of fear. And I would see, so many things that supported that. And I guess this makes a little network in a person's psyche. And when you do get ideas, they come bobbing up through this network and are altered somewhat, and out comes Eraserhead or Blue Velvet.
Did you really say at one point, David, that there was a time when you thought you'd never get out of Philadelphia alive? Or you'd never get out?
I never felt, for there was a long time where I never felt I would get out of Philadelphia, yeah. I was printing engravings and living in a very frightening neighborhood in a big old house. But things were looking pretty bleak. And then I got a grant from the American Film Institute, and it's one of those things that come along in people's lives that really, it's like a bolt of electricity, changed everything.
Now, what kind of kid were you? Were you a good student? Were you a pretty straight kid? And
I was straight as an arrow.
Mm-hmm. Straight as an arrow.
Yeah.
Pretty much sums it up, straight as an arrow. So at some point you hit your head or something. I mean, something happened. At what point do we does one tend to veer into show business? I mean, straight as an arrow.
I went to Philadelphia.
Oh, say no more. Oh. So from where? Now, where are we talking?
I went to Philadelphia indirectly from Montana.
Oh, God. That could change your life forever.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so you get to Philadelphia, and so you were pretty what? Normal kid, good student?
I was a student that always said I had potential, but I wasn't, living up to it.
Oh, well, nice to meet you.
Yes. This is the same boat you're in.
I had the ability, but did not apply myself.
Exactly right.
Did you get that all the time?
I did, Jay.
So what made you go to Philadelphia?
I was going to art school, and I never really wanted to go to Philadelphia, but I found myself crossing this particular bridge in a bus, and the next moment I was there.
Did you eat anything along the way? Was there something?
No, I didn't. The bus never stopped until they got there.
Oh, I see. I didn't know you could go directly from Montana to Philadelphia without stopping by bus.
It was indirect. I actually left from Virginia.
Oh, I see.
And I may have made...
I see.
Where did your early ideas for films come from? When Eraserhead was being formed in your imagination, where were these ideas coming from? And did you have filmmakers in mind that you wished to emulate or take from movies you'd seen as a kid?
No, sir.
Okay.
Ideas are, I think we'd all agree, the greatest things
No question.
going.
Nothing
And
happens
where
unless
do
somebody
they-
has an idea.
Exactly right. And ideas are sort of closely connected to thoughts.
Yeah.
And the ideas and thoughts are out there, and how do they come to us? It's a mystery. One minute they're not there, and the next minute they're there. And but certain things trigger these things. They must. And my greatest influence was the city of Philadelphia.
No kidding.
No kidding. Eraserhead was born in Philadelphia.
And where would the ideas come from? You
From
know,
things,
I know that you look a little beneath the surface that the rest of us see.
Well, everybody does. Everybody senses things.
Yeah.
You go into a room and someone's sitting there, and you immediately know that this person is sad, and you can sense
Right.
it in the air.
Right.
They don't even have to say anything. Words communicate many things, but there's something else that comes through the air that communicates actually much more. And so as you go around in Philadelphia, you see things, and thoughts begin to form.
Things like.
Well, I saw, many things. I didn't probably live in an area like you lived in. I lived in quite bad areas of town.
Okay.
But, so I would see things, and...
Like one thing you saw that.
well, I saw a woman in a backyard squawking like a chicken. Crawling on her hands and knees in tall, dry grass.
Uh-huh.
And I saw, many strange things
That
like
would catch
this,
my
yeah.
eye, too.
Philadelphia, to me, I always say, was my biggest influence. This city and the time of this city when I was here. So when I was here from 65 to 70, the city there was no graffiti. And the buildings seemed to be covered with a black soot. It was a filthy city. And it had a feeling of industry. It had, to me, the most beautiful architecture, row houses that reminded me sort of factory neighborhoods, working neighborhoods. And the streets were narrow. The buildings were all soot-covered. The clouds hung low, and it had a beautiful mood. In the atmosphere, there was fear, there was violence, there was despair and sadness, there was a feeling of insanity, and kind of a knowledge of corruption. And this kind of seeped into me with this architecture and made an influence, which I loved, by the way.
It was certainly different from the wide open spaces and fresh air of Spokane and Missoula, I assume, where you grew up.
Yeah, I grew up in the Northwest, a lot of time in the woods, small towns, relatively speaking, and it was real blue skies, picket fence, mowed lawns kind of world with a lot of hope and chrome. Philadelphia was kind of a poor man's New York City. So it was a weird town. It was kind of a mean town. One woman who was my neighbor reeked of urine. And she was a complete racist. There was another woman who was totally crazy. She was a neighbor, lived down the street with her parents. And she would go around the backyard on her hands and knees and squawk like a chicken and say, "I'm a chicken, I'm a chicken."
and squawk and go around and around in this tall white grass in her backyard. She came up to me one day on the street and she said, "Oh, my nipples hurt." And she was squeezing her breasts and standing in front of me, squeezing them and shaking. "My nipples hurt." Then there is that person I walk by, going to a store to get some smokes or something. I'm walking down the street. There's a very nice lady with her little boy, a little baby on her lap, out on the stoop. I'm walking by. I say, "How you doing?" "How you doing? How you doing?" She turned to her little baby and said, "You grow up like that and I'll fucking kill you." There was thick fear in the air. There was a feeling of sickness, corruption, of racial hatred. But Philadelphia was just perfect to spark things.